The Irishman is remarkable for its commitment to showcase the unique looks and quirks of its cast of actual historical characters. Jimmy Hoffa, Russell Bufalino, Frank Sheeran, and the rest of the gang all made profound, if subtle, contributions to American history. As such, it's not just surprising how much some members of The Irishman's cast look like the characters they're based on. It's a testament to the skill of the actors, the makeup artists, and the costume designers involved in Martin Scorsese's mob epic. Here's a side-by-side glimpse of what the real characters behind The Irishman look like. Frank Sheeran, the loyal Teamster operative, mob hitman, and, if you believe his story, killer of the infamous Jimmy Hoffa, was afforded a luxury that very few of his peers enjoyed. He was allowed to grow old. Sheeran met Russell Bufalino in 1955, and while many of his compatriots met violent ends during that time, Sheeran lived until 2004 when he died of cancer. In The Irishman, Robert De Niro plays Sheeran at every step of his life's journey. And while the actor bears more than a passing resemblance to the titular Irishman during his younger days, the physical similarities really kick in when the movie begins to explore the later parts of Sheeran's life. The entire movie is narrated by an elderly, wheelchair-bound Sheeran, who's reflecting on his various misdeeds, and these scenes capture the real Sheeran's look perfectly.
It was no more complicated than that.
Unlike so many others in his line of work, crime boss Russell Bufalino kept an exceedingly low profile. In fact, he was so private that he earned the nickname the Quiet Don, and very few photos or videos of him actually exist. On one hand, that's a gift to actor Joe Pesci, who had the freedom to make the character of Bufalino his own. On the other, it makes it hard to compare Pesci's performance to the real thing. And yet, as evidenced by a court appearance Bufalino made in 1982, Pesci hit the mark pretty well, at least when it comes to Bufalino's later years. In a scene in The Irishman that takes place around the same time, Bufalino orders a hit on someone who testified against him in an earlier court case, and you can definitely see the physical resemblance. There's a lot we'll never know about Jimmy Hoffa. Despite Sheeran's confession, we may never learn for sure who killed the notorious Teamsters boss. As many experts have pointed out, there are some holes in Sheeran's story, and we certainly won't know what he was really like behind closed doors. We do know, however, what Hoffa was like in public. The Irishman actually recreates part of Hoffa's iconic congressional showdown with Robert Kennedy, and the differences between the real Hoffa and Pacino's interpretation are immediately clear. Where Pacino sits respectfully and largely evades Kennedy's questions, the actual Hoffa is ready to attack. He cuts off Kennedy at every point, spitting out facts and excuses, and pointing accusingly at his questioner. It's not an interrogation, it's a battle. The one thing that both versions have in common, though, whether you're watching the actual Hoffa or Pacino's take, he's absolutely bursting with charisma. You can instantly understand why so many people followed him.
We are the biggest and best and most honest union in this country.
From the right angles, Ray Romano is a dead ringer for Bill Bufalino, Russell Bufalino's cousin, and Jimmy Hoffa's personal lawyer. Romano has it all. The thick glasses, the slick suits, the hangdog posture, and the way that words seem to burst from his mouth as if he can change the truth simply by speaking louder. In addition to the physical similarities, however, Romano also captures Bufalino's overall vibe. There's just something beautifully sleazy about the guy.
You know, I don't care whether you did it or not.
He may only be in a few scenes, but as Hoffa's rival, Anthony Tony Pro Provenzano, actor Stephen Graham makes a huge impact. Whether he's tussling with Hoffa in prison, or showing disrespect by showing up late to a meeting, Graham practically steals every scene he's in.
Can you believe this weather, Frank? Huh? It's 85 degrees outside. Perfect.
But that's not all. Graham also does a pretty canny impersonation of the real Tony Pro. Look at how he moves through an adoring crowd during his introduction, or the brief speech he gives to his fellow Teamsters. Graham is a little more animated, but otherwise, it's almost exactly like the real thing. The actual Tony Pro also shares his on-screen counterpart's laid-back approach to fashion, too. Later in life, a tanned Tony Pro gave a shirtless interview to a national newscaster, and was later photographed in a gaudy checkered shirt and striped jacket. And Hoffa thought a pair of shorts was bad.
Making a point dressing like that? Is that you dress for a meeting?
In The Irishman, Jesse Plemons plays Chucky O'Brien, a man who was so close to Hoffa that the Teamsters boss treated him like a son. According to people who knew him, however, the real O'Brien was very different than how he appeared in the film. According to O'Brien's stepson Jack Goldsmith, he was smarter, tougher, and an integral part of Hoffa's day-to-day operations. The one thing that both O'Brien and the Irishman agree on, though? On the day of Hoffa's disappearance, Chucky was busy delivering a fish to a fellow Teamster.
What kind of fish?
I don't know, the kind you eat, a fish.
But you don't know what kind?
No, I don't.
While the Irishman employs this story to add some levity to what ends up being Hoffa's final car ride, the real O'Brien used it as his alibi, claiming that he couldn't have driven Hoffa to his execution because he was off running the errand. Most criminals try to stay out of the spotlight. Not Joseph Crazy Joe Gallo, though. Gallo was a fixture of New York's high society. He also just happened to be a mobster who kidnapped 4 of his boss's top enforcers, started one gang war, and was directly implicated in another.
I don't know how he got away with that. You don't get away with that. You do that, you die. That's simple.
In The Irishman, stand-up comedian Sebastian Maniscalco plays Gallo with a cocky swagger that fully embodies the gangster's public persona. He even wears Gallo's signature sunglasses. That being said, Maniscalco might look a little too good for that period in the gangster's life. After Gallo was released from prison, his wife described him as extremely frail and pale, although she notes that his natural charisma made him irresistible regardless. If you know anything about stand-up comedy, Don Rickles needs no introduction. Over the course of his long and storied career, the celebrated comic relentlessly made fun of everyone and everything that happened across his path.
I worked Italians, well, not those Italians.
Comedian Jim Norton acquits himself well as the 70s version of Rickles, although he lacks Rickles' deep brow and perpetually angry stare. Remarkably, Rickles' appearance at the Copacabana the night of Joe Gallo's death isn't just a cameo cooked up for The Irishman either. In real life, not only did Rickles perform a set on Gallo's last ever birthday, but he really did go after Gallo while on stage. In fact, Gallo loved Rickles' set so much, he invited the comedian to join him at Umberto's Clam House after his set. Rickles declined, which might have saved his life. As The Irishman shows, Gallo was executed at the restaurant in front of his family just a few hours later. Thanks for watching. Click the links in our video to watch more from Netflix Film Club. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get the latest exclusive videos. Plus, hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.